Hi everyone, welcome back to the Claim Game podcast. I'm joined this week by Crumb, who is our Commercial Claims Director. Graham, thanks for joining us.
Welcome. Morning.
Could you just give a brief overview of your career to date? I know we've only got 20, 30 minutes, but if you could fit in that time, it would be great.
It does feel like a long time. I suppose I stepped into the insurance world in 92. Worked my way through sales and then management, merger, retirement, Oakleafe. That's the the short version of that process.
And in your career, obviously, it's always been mainly in the claims industry as an assessor.
Yep, it's fair to say I started as a salesman, but I only got involved with commercial claims, which meant I learned from the ground up how to deal with them, how to manage people, how to manage sites and so on. Mm-hmm. So I guess I cut my teeth in claims management that way, having to hold jobs for 3-4 days and sometimes a week before the technical staff could get to grips with everything. And I suppose that's how I learnt my way up.
Because, I mean, commercial claims are a completely different beast to domestic, aren't they?
100%. It's much easier, I think, to deal with a domestic claim, despite the fact that people are very emotive about the damages and losses they've got around them. Mm. Businesses, you're dealing with the future of every employee. And the policyholder, sometimes that's the person you're dealing with. And he has promises made to people, and he has expectations, mortgages, rents, loans, pension funds, asset management and everything else. And all of that is at risk if it's not dealt with properly. And the role of an assessor in that realm is much more important and much more dominant.
So, you know, as I've said in every podcast, getting an assessor on board day one really is crucial for your business survival, isn't it?
Definitely with the commercial market, you're dealing with people like the local authority for dangerous buildings, borough engineers and structural engineers and so on. And all these things are insurance related, and you've got to manage that. There's no guarantee they're going to get paid, of course. So you've got to manage that expectation as well as managing the physicality of it. So trying to do as much as you can for as little expenditure is the way to do it.
I think it kind of leads on well to what's the difference between a loss adjuster and a loss assessor?
From an educational point of view, very little. But from a practicality point of view, assessors purely act for the policyholder and are deemed to be independent for the policyholder, advising them. Mm-hmm. But adjusters have a single line of income, so their activity is to protect the rights of the insurer and the costs of the insurer. And the assessor's there to put the claim together in a correct way, not the biggest way. The one that benefits the policyholder, one that benefits the business, for example. We've always got a mind on, can we save the insurance company money? Because sometimes making the insurance company more alert to savings actually adds their visibility of the future of the claim. Mm-hmm. So joined together with adjusters, we manage in the claim, the assessors prepare, present and negotiate and fondle the business into ideas and platforms, and the adjuster will adjudicate it, and that's basically the problem.
So do you think it's fair to say that a loss adjuster then is purely on insurer's side and an assessor is purely on the client side? Yep. Or do you think there's kind of a common ground where there's some independence there?
Well, it has long been said that you can't be independent if you're being paid by someone to judge for them.
Yeah, true.
So it's difficult balance, I think, for an adjuster to manage a commercial claim on their own, because they're not really in the position to advise the clients what to do. It's for the client to prepare and present their claim and understand their problem. The adjuster will only guide or adjudicate. He can't drive the claim one way or the other because it's increasing cost to the insurer. And the adjuster is expected to have a reserve on a claim pretty early on, and it has to be adjusted again later, but he has to get that in the ballpark, and sometimes assessors can help with that. We understand the loss, we spent more time with the client, we understand the future, we understand the legacy, and we can deliver a better managed product for the adjuster to adjudicate on and manage his principal's expectation.
So the loss assessor adds value then for both insurer and the client?
In my view, yes. A recent example would be a meat production holding warehouse in the Midlands, where the insurer was staring down the short end of a £2 million problem. Being an assessor that's aggressive in managing the sites and products like this is that you're able to shorten the length of time of the claim, which in essence is a saving for the insurer. Yeah. The benefit to the policyholder, of course, is his business is back on his feet as quickly as possible. But you can only do that if you have vision or you have an understanding of the problems and the products. So we learn that as we go through our lives, and you can turn these things into showcases of claims preparation and presentation, and bring them to an early closure. That's a saving for the policy for the insurer, but it's a saving for the policyholder too. Their business is not damaged for as long as it could be.
You know, I know everyone across the board at Oakleafe will spend a lot of time with the clients, sitting down, understanding the business, the direction they want to take the business in. In the event of a fire, for instance, things change completely. You know, you lose clients. Industry changes in the space, especially in technology industries. Within a year, the industry has completely changed, and if the business is out of it for long enough, it can't necessarily go back into it again.
No, they can't. And being an assessor, understanding how the client's business functions is fundamental to how you're going to put the claim together or drive it, because you can do things quickly, which will save people money and things like this, but it may not be the best outcome for the business. It may not survive. So understanding the supply line and the buying line is very important in this principle, because you want to save those customers. You want to incentivize them to stay with your client after they've reinstated. And there are ways of doing that. There are a few tools and mechanisms we can use. They're not rare. Of course they're not. It's standard practice, but it's actually how you mould them to the particular claim.
The history of the loss assessor, Graham,
Yep.
which is I find fascinating. Perhaps you could enlighten everybody.
Well, if you look at insurance as a whole, the first insurance policy or first guarantee of insurance written was in the 1600s, based around the shipping and transport of people and goods across the oceans. But as insurance grew up, you then had the Lloyd's Coffee House, which was the base of marine adjusting, if I'm marine insurance. And everyone managed their policies through there. So when the adjusters came around, they were always known as average adjusters. This didn't mean that they were average as individuals. It was an average practice, and it doesn't even refer to the average clause of commercial policies as we know them. Average adjuster was somebody that oversaw a claim against an incident where the ship, the fuel owner, the ship owner, the shipping line, and the various cargo holders all had a responsibility for the loss or for compensating for the loss. You either paid that directly or you took out insurance.
Right.
So that's where that began. And adjusters were the modicum of that. Prior to 1850, 1860, you had insurers using people like magistrates and clergymen and organised police forces as verifiers of the validity of the incident. And so there was no one backing the claim up. It was just saying, yeah, it definitely happened. So, and then adjusters were born out of that. But we all know them as adjusters, but as an institutional body, it didn't start until late after the 1920s. Before that, it was just average adjusters, and we as assessors were average adjusters. And you might look at Captain Thompson, for example. He was an adjuster, a marine adjuster, and became an assessor.
So is it fair to say then that assessors have actually been around longer than adjusters?
I think the skill set's been around longer than adjusters, although we've all been the same. And to be honest, we've all gone full circle, in my view, because whilst we were all on one on one pathway in the beginning, it branched out to become two separate entities, and now legislation and licensing has brought us all back into the same thing. And at Oakleafe, of course, we make everybody in our company a registered adjuster through the SILA process, for example. So everybody behind a desk is a qualified adjuster of one form or another, with one expertise or another, or one experience or another. So we've gone full circle. But of course, adjusters rarely act for policyholders, and actually their charter originally said they couldn't.
Stories, Graham. I mean, I'm sure over the years there's been some comical scenarios and stories that have come out of tragedy, really. But have you got any you'd like to share?
Somebody once said I should write a book where adjusters have turned up and said, "Where's the building?" And it's not there anymore. I guess so. I mean, the storyline, the stories and the storylines are always based around the disaster. But it's what comes out of that is the important thing, the relationships you build with customers for the longevity. Great deal of the recommendations I get now are the people I worked with in the 90s and so on. So, and the adjusters that you worked with in the 90s or against, whichever your version is that they are still in the networks and they are still available to speak to, and they still have the same attitude as they had before, albeit they've lost their DAs, the majority of them, the delegated authorities. So originally you could get a delegated authority of £500,000 on on the first day of the loss. You'd get an interim payment request rubber stamped on the first day because the loss is too large to ignore, and that was quite useful.
Thing of the past, though. Now,
I think somebody old guard is driving to get it back in some way or other, some authority where they can release funds. Because I think at the end of the coalface, the policyholder wants to see service from both sides of the fence. Why shouldn't they? What the policyholder doesn't understand, without that DA in place, then there's a waiting game. You know, up to the point of liability being accepted, they're technically not insured until liability is accepted. Meanwhile, we have to prepare and present and negotiate on a hollow promise. And that's what makes it difficult for the policyholder. They don't have the understanding or the concept of that. And the adjusters is just as frustrated because they can't make decisions. And those that can make decisions are very low DAs. And very often it's removed from their workload and given to somebody higher up, which creates more delays for the policyholder. So I think when there are major losses, you just generally go for the major adjusters.
So do you think that the claims industry has changed for the better, you know, with the introduction of technology and new systems in place, or do you think it's taken a step backwards?
I have mixed views on that. I once met at Aviva a company that was providing a stress test system for reporting claims. So it judged the claimant before it got to a human. Wow. And they tried to sell it to us where I was working, and we said, why would we want to be judge and jury? We chase claims, we chase work. It's a fire. We don't need to determine it's a fire or a flood. We know it is. So the claimant has got a claim. Whether it's right or wrong is something else, but you can't stress test a claimant. It's already stressed. Yeah. How does that work? And I think those things have come and gone, or maybe there's better models for it. But there's a human interaction on the telephone calls these days. Maybe stress testing is going on in the background. But claims platforms is a big problem for me. Insurers send out bodyguard adjusters with a tablet, and they do a walk around video, they do a live presentation. Mr. and Mrs. Smith's house are already sleeping in the garage because they can't find anywhere else to live. The neighbours are not speaking to them because they've burnt down their houses as well. And it's a very messy situation, and that's a detachment from reality. And then you can't judge the damage on the property or the relationship problem by walking around with a tablet with a video on it. You know, and I just think that's an anaesthetic way of dealing with things, and they shouldn't be doing that.
Well, I've had clients, especially during the pandemic, where insurers are asking them to walk around with their smartphone, identifying the damage based purely upon that video. They're then making an assessment, providing a cost and a scope of works, and actually settling the claim based on a video.
Yeah.
Videos don't pick up odour, for instance. They can't pick up certain structural damage to materials that are hidden. Very, very dangerous system to use, and it's not something that I'm comfortable with in the industry.
I think the experience of policyholders in the domestic market is either 100% good or 100% bad. Yeah. I don't think there's any middle ground there. They have generally public don't have a concept of what is wrong with their property. They do it by observation and not by knowledge. Yeah. And this is fundamental to failure. And bear in mind the policyholders to prepare and present. And if they don't get it right, there's nobody going to tell them to do it better. And they'll fall foul of the Defective Premises Act when they come to sell their property, for example. and things like this, they're going to be in an awful lot of trouble. The property will be devalued because it hasn't been dealt with properly. And it is a balance, but then reverts back to it being a balance between putting your arm around a client but avoiding telling them it's going to be okay, because we know it's not. It's not going to be okay. It's not a simple product, not a simple process. It's not a simple outcome. And but then there's the alternative, that is to be stone cold with people and deliver the message as brutally as possible, so there's an awareness immediately that it's not going to go their way until it's been dealt with properly. Then you get the other side of the coin, where the adjuster is expected, if he's working alone, of course, to do the same as the assessor, put their arm around the customer, tell him it's going to be all right when he knows it's not, and so on. So there is a difficult ground there, and the public needs to be educated. And I just think that assessors have other roles to play apart from responding. We should be educated, the public, as much as we can. What is right, what is wrong, what should be done, what shouldn't be done. And we're bound by certain constructive rules as well. You take asbestos and things like this, and you look at that and you say, well, that's got to be dealt with. Yeah, but that was all right before. Yeah, but it's not all right now. You know, that's a hard message to tell someone, that half their house is going to be taken apart because you've got one product that shouldn't be in there. But the rules are the rules, the law is the law, and the insurer has to admit that they've got to deal with that. And that's a problem with the reserve.
Yeah, I've found that a lot, where you get an inexperienced adjuster day one, set their reserve grossly undervalued, and then when we start to quantify the claim, their reserve is maybe 10-15% of the true cost. The ripples it creates through the whole process.
Yeah, of course. And if the adjuster's not educated properly by the assessor or the policyholder that the problem is X, Y, Z, then he's not going to go back and have the right reserve, and he's not going to come at the problem the right way. And that's the problem when insurers use contractor networks based on money saving rather than money spending. That's not to say assessors want to do money spending, we just want to spend it right, in the right way, for the right product and right services.
A lot of them insurers are using desktop rates now as opposed to market rates, and you know as well as I do that every individual claim has different parameters, logistical issues, supply issues. You know, you're doing certain regions of the UK, you can't get contractors to go and attend. So to summarise then and finish up to date, where do you see the claims industry in 5 years, 10 years? Now, what is the future of the claims industry?
I don't think there's going to be much of a change. I think maybe there'll be some more legislation, some more tidying up. And let's not forget, assessors are regulated in general, and adjusters fall under the insurance protection generally. So I think there's more regulation to come. I think the AI system of claim management is to the detriment of the policyholder. Yeah, I agree. Unless the robot looks like me and you, but you know it's not going to happen, right?
They're not that good.
I just don't think the claims industry is going to change that much. There'll be some tinkering around the edges on and internal to the particular companies, but the formula is going to be the same. We will either be introduced to a policyholder, be requested by a policyholder, or we'll go to see a policyholder. And our role as assessors won't change. We're always going to have a public interface and a personal interface with people. And the adjusters and insurers may cut their cloth according to their costs and start doing more electronic work or sending out, I don't know, bots.
If you have got any questions or any claim related issues, or you would like to reach out to Oakleafe, we are here at the end of the phone 24/7, and we'll be happy to help you with any issue that you've got or problem or claims advice. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.